What was the pooled long-term cardiovascular safety data here?
Well, let's start where we all like to start. There's two focuses when we do these trials. Does it work compared to either no therapy or to the standard therapy, and the standard therapy being ESA? So the answer to that is absolutely. Roxadustat treated the anemia, no problems of efficacy. Compared either the placebo in the CKD trials or to an active comparator ESAs in the dialysis trials. When it comes to safety, very, very exciting. So what we really focus on, to Dan's earlier point, is major adverse cardiovascular events, MACE, and then MACE plus, which adds to that congestive heart failure or hospitalization. In the CKD population, comparing therapy patients treated with roxadustat to placebo, the safety signals were identical, which of course makes sense, right? Because you're comparing it to placebo, which is nothing. Importantly, in the dialysis population, we saw major advantages to the therapy with roxadustat. In the most vulnerable population, that is the incident dialysis patients, and let me just tease this out. Those are patients that typically crash onto dialysis. And by that, I mean they end up in the hospital, they may have had little to no CKD management, no management of anemia. The nephrologist sees them, says, oh my gosh, we have to start emergency dialysis. These patients are really the sickest of the sick, and their mortality in the first 3 to 4 months of dialysis is almost double what a prevalent patient's mortality is. Those patients in the Himalaya trial had a 30% lower MACE and a 34% lower MACE plus safety signal. I mean, that is huge.
I was about to say, normally you hear studies, well, we got 3% here or 10%. 30% is a lot. It's big.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
With a good p-value, I assume.
Pardon me?
With a good p-value, I assume.
Yes, the p-value I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was significant.
Okay.
Dan probably remembers it off the top of his head. Then when you go to the prevalent patients, we saw a 30% MACE plus advantage. So if you're a patient and you're saying, I want to do the best I can do on dialysis, you know, you look at this data, and to Dan's earlier point, patients don't read the package insert, you're going to want to choose something that gets a 30% advantage.
You know what patients do read? They read Google.
Yeah, I know. Dan, I don't know if I've let anything out because I know you're deep in this data.
No, I think you covered it. The main issue is we didn't see an increase in cardiovascular events compared to placebo in the non-dialysis patients. So, and there's some data. It's difficult to manage because it turned out that these patients in these trials of non-dialysis patients were much later in their CKD than in even the TREAT trial. So we were looking at people really on the edge of stage 4 to stage 5 who entered these trials. So they were more anemic, they had lower GFRs, and they were much more likely to be getting onto dialysis in the next 6 to 24 months. And so the placebo patients quickly ran into serious issues with severe anemia and needed either rescue therapy with ESAs or were starting on dialysis and needed to start ESA therapy. Whereas the people getting their anemia treated with the roxadustat pill wound up having improvement in their anemia very quickly and reductions in transfusions, in addition to not having an increase in cardiovascular events.
Now, you said something just there, which I think is important. I want to make sure everybody heard this. It's a pill. It's not an injection. Doesn't have to be refrigerated, right? And it can be taken at home. You don't have to come.
Yep.
So,
and it seems to enhance their iron absorption. So, I mean, the beauty of the physiology is every time they take this pill, the body has a brief stimulation and production of EPO that then goes back down to baseline. and a little bit of enhancement of iron absorption and iron release from the body. That anemia of chronic disease is iron locked up in your macrophages. Well, this helps release that. And so it treats this anemia of chronic disease two different ways, not just through pharmacologic EPO.
That's fascinating.